Well, good evening, chat. What are we even doing here? I was informed this was a nothing burger. I was informed of that months ago. We shouldn't even be talking right now. There might be a bit of an echo off the walls of my bunker as I've dug deep into the sweet, sweet earth to protect myself from all the koofers out there. Nonetheless, I shouldn't even be streaming right now. I should be back to talking about anime and manga because there's nothing happening. Oh, I heard that quite a lot when this started back in the middle of January. Repeatedly told this was a nothing burger by all the concerned trolls on Twitter, by all the 50 centers sent by the Chinese Communist government, that this was something nobody needed to pay attention to. And yet here we are. Here we are months later. Months and months and months later. Still dealing with it as it spreads rapidly across the earth, and its numbers are accelerating. Oh, woe unto those who doubted our girl. You said she couldn't do it. It wasn't possible for our little Corona-chan to take hold of the world and just keep riding it like a pony. And yet here she is. The commies came for me there. Let's see if this remedies the situation. Oh, we might be in trouble, chat. I don't know. We'll have to find out in a second here. I'm going to have to refresh some things and double check some things to see if we've been taken off the internet. I don't know if that's happening right now. Are we back? Have I made it back from the land of the land of Franzia? I don't even know where I cut out right there. Everything just went to shit. Oh yeah, that's right. You F5. Those communists aren't going to keep me off the internet. I'm going to go Liberty Prime on these motherfuckers. That's right, chat. We're back. Oh, you couldn't do it. Oh, I'm sorry, communism. You failed once again. Xi Jinping, you'll have to try harder than that. I probably shouldn't taunt him. He's probably got a backup plan ready to go. And yet, here we are. Hopefully this works out. Now, today's going to be a nice, relaxed stream. I'm going to have a proper stream on Sunday where we go over the big news items and we go over all the things that have happened. Again, I don't know where I cut off there. I was in the middle of my amazing monologue, and all of a sudden I noticed I'm talking to no one, which is a common occurrence. It's a random thing that normally happens. You know, you're just going off, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, there's nobody around me, and I just keep talking. What the fuck's happening? I'll try to quickly sum it up. I told you so. Eat shit, commies. Oh, I told you so. I told you back in January. You motherfuckers didn't believe me. Taking your 50-cent payments, you concerned trolling motherfuckers. Well, here we are, almost in April, and this shit's wildfire. It's everywhere. You doubted she could do it, but she did. And now here we are, right in the middle of the shit. I know there are a lot of you out there listening right now. This isn't going to be an amazing stream. It's more of a catching up stream. Listen to it in the background. Treat it like a radio broadcast as you dig your bunker a few feet deeper, as you stock your pantry and circle help wanted ads, which you're probably going to be doing because from what I hear, unemployment has become a monumental mountain that people are going to need to climb with 3.8, 3.3, 3.8 million people applying for unemployment, which blows any other number right out of the goddamn water. And that number is expected to double. Look at the situation we find ourselves in now, just merely 2 months later from the date that I started streaming. That's not even the date this really began. I mean, it started getting bad in early January for China, of course, with the lockdowns and everything else, and the speculation the first case arrived or showed up near the wet market in November. We started paying attention to it here back in the middle of January. And in that 2 months, it's infected nearly every nation on Earth. Think about that. Every goddamn nation on Earth. This isn't a couldn't get into Madagascar kind of thing. Already made it. This isn't a couldn't get into Greenland or Iceland thing. Already made it. If you played Plague Inc., you know where the game is going. That's a victory condition in and of itself. We just have areas of Asia and a few areas of Africa to take over. What is there, 20 countries left? There are, 194, 196 when you include the little city-states nobody really pays attention to? And China and this disease have managed to infect nearly all of them. total global saturation. That's where we're sitting at right now. We've got Italy with a death rate which is over 10%, 10.56%, at least going off of BNO's numbers, which have been fairly accurate because they're source backed. You could use World Infometer. There are other ones out there that you can use to track the numbers. New York Times tracks the numbers. Generally, they're all fairly accurate. We've seen this explode in Europe. We've seen it explode in the Middle East, and it's finally made its way over here to the land of obesity and Big Macs. Good old America. Oh, and what havoc it's wreaked on its way, as the supply chains and manufacturing of every nation have bent their knee, got on their fucking knees before Corona Chan. We've seen the economy get its ass kicked. Now, we've had a little bit of a recovery. You might call that a dead cat bounce. I don't know where it's going. All I know that at its height so far, it locked off, I'd say around 11,000 points off the Dow and made the S&P and NASDAQ its bitch. Now we see Americans under shelter-in-place mandates from different states all over the country. We see non-essential jobs closed up, not just here in America, but in Europe as well. Numerous industries affected, numerous jobs affected. Most people living paycheck to paycheck don't know what to do. And all the while we get mixed messages. You know, when I started covering this, I noticed a few things. In the beginning, it was a lot of left-leaning people saying that this was a nothing burger. I'm talking outside of the China shills and the concern trolls. If we're looking at blue checkmark authoritarian, public speakers, the talking heads of the internet and the industries, there's a lot of left-leaners that were saying it was a nothing burger. It was racism. How dare you talk about this disease coming from Wuhan? How dare you talk about the risk it poses to the world? How dare you talk about the effect it's going to have? But as it made its way over here, that started to change. They started to get quieter, and in their place, we got more right-wing, more right-leaning people saying it's a nothing burger. It's really remarkable. The line of dialogue, the messaging is the same. It's who's saying it has changed. Went from the lefties saying it to now the right-wingers saying it. And it's that same message we heard people like Eugene, it's just a flu, goo, tell us repeatedly. Nothing to worry about, just a little case of the sniffles. And now the American people are being presented with an option from their leaders. But their leaders don't really have the balls to actually say what the option they're putting forward is. So let me put it in plain English for you. It's the economy or your grandmother. I know Dick Masterson was joking about that during our little debate on the kill stream, but it's the truth. You're being presented with the option that, who cares? Some Americans are expendable. There's a percentage we're willing to go with if it doesn't hurt the economy. That money might be more important than family. So if you're a mother or father or grandfather or grandmother die, if it's an aunt or an uncle, if it's a cousin, or God help you, your son or daughter, well, their death doesn't really matter because we need that Dow to be green, baby. We need to make those big bucks. So we got to reopen the country after a sporadic, haphazard lockdown, which seems to go from region to region, but kind of disregards the whole point of a lockdown in the first place. If you're allowing regional travel, if you're allowing people to come from infected areas where there's a high case rate, you're letting them go to another state, another area of the country, they're going to bring the disease with them. Now, a lot of governors, I'd say probably half the governors in the state have issued some form of lockdown. They've issued some form of shelter in place or some rules about what businesses can be opened or how public gatherings operate, but nothing federally mandated. And it's bizarre to me because I don't think that's going to work. Now, we've been told that a miracle drug is on its way, hydrochloroquine, mixed with an antibiotic. That's going to save the day. That's what you've been told. But those drugs have been known about since the middle of last month. It's not a new discovery. If you've been paying attention to this or following it for a while, you know there's a whole treatment regimen that's been proposed to the public. Everything from Caletra, which is a AIDS medication, interferon alpha 2B, which is a cancer medication. People were put on steroids before they found out that was counterintuitive. Took them off that. There's also the Japanese flu drug, which I can't remember the name of. I just call it the Japanese jack-off drug because it starts with FAP. Fapinovir? Can't really remember. Of course, there are the experimental drugs put out by companies like Gilead Sciences, which is remdesivir. We use that on one of the first patients in Washington State, as well as sending sample doses off to China, I believe, at the very beginning of February. So there have been numerous medications that have been tried out in different clinical trials, different settings, different settings all over the world, really. Will it work? I can't tell you. I know that it's been spread around now, that the medication's been given out in mass quantities in New York since, I believe, Tuesday. And we're on Friday evening, and we still see the New York numbers looking abysmal, especially in New York City with a high death rate. Still a lot of people in critical care, a lot of ICU patients, as well as an expanded, explosive amount of infections. So if that miracle drug is going to work, I hope it works soon, because it's been about 4 days now. And the little Jewish guy that ran his study in the Hasidic community said it cured 350 people within 5 days. So I would hope by Monday or Tuesday of next week we have some amazing results to show, and then we can put this behind us. But I've been struck by one message, I think, that freaks me out a little bit. I don't know if you've seen it as you've watched this, if you've heard Dr. Fauci, and is it Brix or Bix? I don't know what her name is. But there's one repeated thing that constantly comes up when these people are talking on television. I think it's something you need to hone in on, because I think it's the most honest thing you're going to get out of anybody during any of this. And that's fear. And that fear that comes across to me when they talk about that vaccine. And they've talked about it quite a bit. Now ask yourself, if this is such a nothing burger, if we have miraculous medical concoctions we can use to wipe it out immediately, why they're so focused on a vaccine. Why they're talking about changing standards of how vaccine trials are even run. I think it was Fauci who went up there to say that they were going to do something unheard of. That while they were running their phase 1 on these vaccines, they were going to begin mass production immediately, just in the hopes that if the vaccine showed promise, they could immediately have it ready to use within 12 to 18 months. Brix has said the same thing when she talks about the infection rates, when she talks about the seasonality of this, about the waves of it coming through the world, expecting that there'll be 2 to 3 waves that will see this continue on into spring of 2021, which we've heard parroted from different world governments. A lot of those closed-door estimates that we're getting from people are saying they think this fucker is going to stick around until late next year, September of next year. And so we hear these people get up and they talk about all sorts of things, but they keep coming back to that fucking vaccine. And their focus on that, they're talking about that, makes me think that they're worried and that they just don't want to really address it. It's fine to have hope. It's fine to think that there's going to be some drug combination that's going to come out and magically kick this in the balls and it's going to disappear. But if that were the case, if they really, really, truly believed it, I don't think they would be so focused on this amount of vaccine production and investment and repeated messaging. But then again, I'm the doomer, right? I'm the black-pilled guy, here to give you the bad news you don't want to hear, because I always look at the pessimistic outcome, like laughing at the idea of a campaign which says 15 days to stop the spread, when a CDC study shows that this fucking thing lives for 17 days on surfaces. You remember when they came out initially and told you it only exists for, 3 to 4 hours on cardboard, maybe a day on steel surfaces, maybe 3 days if it was the most optimal of conditions, and then they go to the Death Princess cruise ship and they find out it lives for 17 fucking days. They're finding the virus all over the goddamn place in the cabins of the people that were infected. So 15 days to stop the spread of something that sticks around for 17 days, might want to adjust that fucking campaign a little bit. That's all I'm saying. Speaking of cruise ships, can we stop with the fucking cruises? We have another death ship that's got a whole new batch of infected people just waiting to disembark into some unlucky country and spread the gift to everybody. Always stunning and amazing, I know. Watching the people talk about these medications it's remarkable, because it's old news. None of it's new. This shit has been in treatment regimens all over the place. It really is not new news. Africans on Twitter were laughing about the idea of chloroquine being used because they didn't think Americans were going to be prepared for the side effects. And sure, we're going with a derivative of it, hydrochloroquine, so it's not as intense. But they still thought the idea of a bunch of blind Americans from the retinopathy was Kind of funny, a bunch of deaf people walking. Our disease been up to? Well, we heard news come out of China a month or so ago talking about two strains, the S-Cove and the L-Cove strain. One more infective and dangerous than the other. Then we have an Icelandic study come out saying that they found 40 mutations beyond those two strains. So she's out there doing all sorts of crazy shit we don't really understand or know about. Maybe that's why we're getting asymptomatic reports of asymptomatic carriers who are now losing their sense of smell and taste, with some doctors speculating it might be nerve damage, which of course shouldn't be surprising to you after the Beijing study was published, I believe, 5 weeks ago, talking about viral encephalitis in one patient, and also finding the virus in spinal fluid, that it infects the nervous system and it can do all sorts of crazy shit we don't really understand fully. We had early reports coming out of China of people in the Guangdong province having a 14% reinfection rate. And now you've got articles from NPR just a day or so ago talking about how 5 to 10% of people in Wuhan are testing positive again. How some have even tested positive 3 times, with their doctors going into isolation wards. In fact, one of the Chinese doctors that was interviewed and was talking about this had brought up the fact they found it very awkward that if the virus wasn't still, infectious, if you couldn't infect people the second or third time around, why were they putting people in isolation? Why were they bringing them back to the hospitals? And I know there's a lot of debate about the reliability of the Chinese tests, 30 to 50% false negatives with the tests that they were using, the way they worked. I don't know, maybe they ordered them from the fucking CDC. We all know the CDC is so great at producing reliable fucking tests with their reagents. So maybe that was what the problem was. I don't know 100%. But I do know that reinfection has been something that's been talked about in other nations that aren't using Chinese tests, like Japan, South Korea, Israel, and Canada. And it will be interesting to see what happens in the United States if people begin to show reoccurrence or reinfection, or if the virus just doesn't ever disappear. We don't know. But a lot of all these old stories, the speculations and the rumors that we talked about over the past 2 months are starting to bear fruit. We're hearing about medications that were used before, and now they're making the mainstream news. We're talking about symptoms that were ignored, and now they're making the mainstream news. You remember when the Chinese said it infected pets? Nobody believed them, and then Hong Kong showed evidence that that was true. Now we're getting reports it's not just dogs, but cats that can get the fucking virus. Lovely. What a lovely, completely 100% natural disease that wasn't in any way made in a biolaboratory in the province of Hubei, in the city of Wuhan. So our girls out there doing all sorts of fucking weird shit. Now, is a loss of sense of smell and taste, is that permanent when they say nerve damage? I have no idea. All I know is this shit gets weirder and weirder by the day. We get more and more reports of it doing absurd things by the day. There was one article that came out talking about a patient that was asymptomatic, and they did a CAT scan of their lungs, and they were completely trashed. Absolutely fucking destroyed. Of course, then they quickly took a turn for the worse and went critical and had to be put on oxygen and a ventilator. We heard reports coming out of China saying people were on vents for up to 30 days. A lot of people said that can't be true. You can't have somebody on a vent for 30 days, and yet in New York City, we're seeing people on vents from anywhere from 11 to upwards of 21 days already. Imagine that. 3 consecutive weeks on a ventilator because you've gone into ARDS. And what are they giving you? How are they treating that? If you have a patient that needs an ICU bed, that needs a ventilator from you, and the typical stay on a ventilator for most other illnesses is 4 days, but your COVID patient needs it for 3 weeks, that has a cumulative effect. It snowballs. It adds up. That's why you see people like Cuomo shitting their pants talking about needing 30,000 ventilators. If it was any other disease, he probably wouldn't need 30,000 vents. He'd probably need 10,000. But because patients can stay upwards of 3 to 4 weeks on a vent, you need a whole lot of vents to deal with it. I also love the idea that's been proposed of hotspots. We hear that a lot. Hotspots. Oh, New York City's a hotspot. Very true. Comparatively. Relatively, in the United States, yes, New York City would be a hotspot. And when you say that, you make it sound like, oh, well, New York is where it's going to start first. That's where the tidal wave is coming from. But go look up the stats of other states like New Jersey or California or Washington or Louisiana. Go look at the numbers they have. Not even their growth, they're just the total number of cases, and they're comparable to other countries. So, yes, within the United States, it is a hotspot. But compared to the world, many of our states are hotspots because they have a fuck ton of cases. And we're basing our approach really in the United States off dealing with a region by itself, hoping that the disease is so kind as to allow us a strategy like that. Like, Corona Chan's just going to sit back in a chair and be like, yeah, I'll just start with New York for now. And then in 3 to 4 weeks, I'll go fuck with Washington. And another 2 weeks, I'll go hit California. So you have plenty of time to prepare and get ready. But that's not how a virus works. That's not how a disease works. This thing could go critical. It could flare up hotspots all over the United States simultaneously. If you think they're already shitting themselves in New York, what are they going to do, federally or on a state level? If it starts to blow up in Washington, California, Louisiana, Florida, and let's throw in a Michigan too, all at the same time, what do we do if we start getting 30 to 40,000 infected over the span of a week in 5 to 6 different areas? How are we going to produce those ventilators? The ventilators, which, by the way, take a while to produce, even with GM doing it, even with Ford throwing their full weight behind it. Oh, I feel like we got caught with our pants down. We had such a run up to this. We had so much time to really prepare for it. We knew what was going on in China. I believe Trump and his team said they were aware early January 11th or 12th. This is right around the Wuhan lockdown time. They saw what was going on, and we all saw and watched as it spread to the Middle East and then into Europe, and then really took off. So we had a month or two build up to really start stockpiling the shit out of stuff. But what happened? Well, a lot of things happened. One, we didn't produce like we should have. We didn't prepare like we should have. And we also allowed Chinese nationalists working for corporations in the United States, and not just the U.S., but other countries' experiences too, like Canada and Mexico and everyone, where they'd send out their employees, these Chinese, and they'd buy up stocks of 3M masks, and they'd buy up gowns, they'd buy up gloves, they'd buy up machinery, and they'd ship it all back to China. So China was prepared. So it's humorous to me to hear about China lending aid to foreign countries like in Italy or somewhere else, because that's basically shit they took from us that we could have used to prepare ahead of time. But they bought out the stores, they bought out the supply, and started shipping it back overseas because they were short on it because they didn't have enough of it. I guess I am a pessimist. When I look at the situation and how it's unfolded, when I look at what people are grasping onto as I watch the damage to the economy, this could end tomorrow. And you're going to feel the reverberations of this fucking shit for at least 3 to 5 years. I guarantee it. It's going to have an effect on the economy. It's going to have an effect on how manufacturing jobs and medical supplies and all sorts of things happen. About international relationships. We're going to start to re-examine how we interact with each other all over the world. How we deal with one another all over the world. And if this shit about reinfection, if it's even a little bit true, if people that were positive with this once somehow flare up again, or they're so susceptible to the disease that their antibodies aren't built up and they immediately get it again, how do you deal with that? You're looking at nearly 600,000 infected worldwide. Let's say it ended today and nobody else got infected. They just all miraculously recovered. But then you find out that they're still infectious. That in a week or a month they could suddenly start to flare up again and the virus is now contagious again. So what do you do with those 600,000 people in every nation on earth? They could start the spread of the disease again. Even if it's just 5 to 10% or 14% like Guangdong had said. But let's say 10%, 60,000 people. Let's say it's just a 10% reoccurrence rate. What do you do with those 60,000? Do you isolate them? Do you put them in a little house on an island and never let them leave? Now imagine that number keeps growing and it's millions infected. You can see how it could become a bit of a big problem. And this argument that these are defective tests, that's not going to last forever, everyone. I know the people and why they're saying it, and there's some truth to it. But eventually, you're not going to be able to lean back on that and explain away the reinfection or the reoccurrence as faulty testing equipment. Not this many, not this dispersed around the world. This thing is a little more vicious, I think, than people realized. And I think, too, as we've watched the numbers increase, as we've watched Italy and Spain and France, and of course the United States, we've noticed that there's something awfully wrong about the Chinese numbers. My God, do you think they might have lied? It's not like they've done that numerous times before when it comes to disease statistics, like they did with SARS and swine flu and every other goddamn thing that's really happened over the past 20 to 30 years. In fact, their economy they lie so much about, there's a special index created to track the real numbers. I'll show you that on Sunday. It's quite funny, actually, how people don't really have any faith in the ability of China to report on its own economy, so they created their own index to track the real thing. But when you look at 80,000 plus people infected in Italy with a 10% death rate, when you look at the U.S. with 100,000 infected and a rising death rate as those ICU beds get full, as capacity is surged past, as you look at the Spains and the Frances, and you look at everybody else and how quickly it seems to be spreading or gaining momentum, as the amount of people pile up that are getting critically ill, as the amount of people that are dying start to pile up, and you look back on those Chinese numbers and you realize they had months of this, that they were well ahead of everybody else by months, and their numbers suddenly stop at 80,000 and they never go any farther, and dense packed cities of 11 million, 12 million, 15 million people, in a country that locked down 750 million people over this, you're telling me they only have 80,000 infected and only 3,000 dead? I know people brought up the difference of age demographics. I was unaware that China had no old people in it. I didn't realize it was a nation of Zoomers, that once you hit the age of 20, you were shot in the head. Apparently, it's a nation run by teenagers that love Twitch. Who knew? Who knew? I guess we could get along with them if we'd only known their love of video games. Those young Chinese people who never ever age past 40. So I'm starting to suspect that maybe the Chinese lied. Maybe they made up some things. Maybe they weren't wholly, totally honest with us. Which I think brings around a really interesting point. Let's, again, hypothetically speculate that this ends tomorrow. With the amount of infection and death and worry that's happened to people physically, with the amount of financial damage that is more than obviously apparent, with the mass rise in unemployment around the world because people have been laid off or put on furlough, or their jobs have just disappeared because the company collapsed. This was a hit. This fucked with the world for months. So is China going to be held responsible for it? Now you can brush away and say, they didn't make this in a biolaboratory, that's a conspiracy theory. Well, even going on that line of thinking, even if you believe this is a naturally developing disease that emerged in China in their wet market or somewhere in Wuhan or Hubei or wherever, they still hid the numbers from us. They hid the truth about what was happening. 80,000 is bullshit. And I think it's starting to become clear that that's bullshit. So if you're a nation that knows that you have a highly infectious disease that could damage a population or cripple an economy, and you withhold very important information from other nations that are vulnerable to that disease, give me my 40 acres and a mule. Did I just drop again? Boy, the Chinese are getting angry with me today. I better watch what I'm saying over here. Talking about reparations, the Chinese don't like that very much. But if you cause that much harm to other nations, I'm even downplaying it by saying it like that. When you cause harm to the entire fucking world, not just other nations makes it seem like I'm saying a handful of countries, a percentage of nations. No, when you literally fuck the entire planet over because you didn't want to be honest with them about what was happening because you'll look bad and you want to save face, and your effort to save face puts everyone else at risk, I think you should be held accountable. Economically held accountable. And if you can't be held accountable economically, well, there's always the nuclear option, isn't there? Now, I'm not here to say that one nuke for every country infected is a fair amount of retribution. I'd probably say 2 nukes. But I'm thinking that something could be done. A message could be sent that you went a little too far this time by hiding your information, Winnie the Pooh, by concealing this information, Xi Jinping, and putting the world at risk and doing this sort of damage to the American people and to everyone on every continent, even the island nations, that you fucking need to pay what you owe. Now, how do we divvy that up? I don't know. Do we take land from them? Natural resources, maybe? Wipe away debt? I don't know what we do. But they got to pay what they fucking owe. And they owe quite a bit based on the amount of damage that's going on right now. I don't know, chat. Am I off on that? Am I a little too ahead of the curve when I start talking about this? Do I need to wait a little while? No, not bomb Wuhan, chat. I'm saying bomb. That's what I'm throwing out there. Oh, they are not. They are not happy today, chat. I'm sorry. Everything's just going tits up on me. A lot of technical difficulties. Surprising amounts of technical difficulties doing the stream, just simply talking about China, just my voice. Not even really doing anything, but just simply talking to you. A lot of stuttering, a lot of issues. But you can't keep me down, Z. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, Z. I'm going to tell people the truth. The truthfulness of it. Get the word out there that you need to pay what you motherfucking owe, Z. So what do you think, Chad, if we were to give estimates, if we were to talk about where this is going to go, what do you think the final tally is going to be? Well, it really has picked up steam. It was 90 days from the first infection or first recorded infection till 100,000. Then I believe it was 12 days from 100,000 to 200,000, and then 4 to 5 days from 200 to 300. And now we're averaging roughly 2 to 3 days to go up 100,000. We're at 6 now. So in the month of March, we've basically gained 400,000 infected, potentially 500,000 by the end of the month. And that death rate's going to start to follow behind as more and more people get sick. I mean, where does it end? If that's just New York, New York City in particular, I think it's 45,000 in New York are infected, and 25,000 of them to 30,000 of them are located in New York City. I mean, that's just really one city. That's one region. You've got lots of areas of the country with high populations and cities. Even in the sparsely populated states, they have cities with millions of people. So lots of potential areas and zones where things could go terrible. And it really isn't, it hasn't hit its peak. It hasn't hit its apex in New York. I mean, they're gearing up for, what was it, Cuomo said, 140,000 cases just in New York, which might be an underestimate. Or maybe an overestimate. Maybe the hydrochloroquine will work, or whatever the hell you pronounce it. Maybe that'll be the magic mystery bullet that takes the disease out. But probably not. So what do you think, chat? What's your guesstimate? Let's just keep it to America. It's hard to tally in all the other nations. What do you think will be the final estimate for America? If you could look forward, if you had psychic powers, if you could tell the future, if you were a soothsayer, what would your guess be for the amount of infected total in America? And then what do you think the total tally will be for dead once we're finished? I think we're at 105,000 infected right now and about 1,500, 1,600 dead. So what do you think that final number is going to look like? $6 million? Well, you're throwing out a high number there. Oh boy. Somebody thinks 5 million by the end of April. 5 million infected, 100 million infected, a lot of high numbers. 2 to 4, 6 million. Oh, you're going so quick it's hard to keep up, chat. You're typing at the speed people are getting infected in the country. I don't know how somebody came up with a negative number. Did they unsick themselves? Is that some new trick we've all forgotten how to do? I'm seeing a lot of high estimates. At the very least, I'm seeing most people speculate from 2 to 10 million, I'd say, is where the majority are throwing out their numbers. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are going to be. I really don't. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised at how quickly this has exploded in the United States. I thought we would have a little bit better chance at containing it. I think it was March 2nd or 3rd that Trump was talking about 15 infected and that it would be a miraculous recovery. They'd go down to zero, and by April, we wouldn't even be talking about this. So, in the span of what, 23 days, 24 days, we've gone from 15 to 20 cases up to over 100,000 cases. And now we're averaging somewhere between 15 to 20,000 new infections a day. And that's primarily from New York. But if other areas start to catch on, your Louisianas, your Washingtons, your Californias, your Michigans, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck the number's going to look like. Imagine pulling New York numbers and 10 to 20 cities all over the United States every day for 3 to 4 weeks. Imagine the strain that's going to put on health workers or police departments. I mean, my God, there was a report coming out of New York City that 11% of New York uniformed officers were on sick leave. Now, in that same information blurb, they had said that about 400 to 500 of them just recently had tested positive for COVID. Now, I don't know if that means to imply that 11% of the workforce in the police department in New York City have COVID, or if they're just saying that, those 400 to 500 do, but 11% are out sick because they don't want to deal with this shit. I couldn't tell you. Frankly, I don't blame them. I feel bad for a lot of people that are stuck on the front lines of this shit. You've got cops that have to deal with it. You've got healthcare workers that have to deal with it. But, I mean, think about the other people. As everybody gets told what's an essential or non-essential job, there are a lot of people working a minimum wage job that are going to get fucked in the ass because they're technically essential. So the person making a very low amount of money working at the gas station can't take a day off. The person working at the fucking checkout at your grocery store or a Walmart can't take the day off, and they're exposed to that shit all the time. What a fucking nightmare scenario that would be. As everybody else is sheltering in place, you're forced to go to your fucking job. Now, I know this stimulus package, this bill that passed for $2.2 trillion, I believe, is supposed to help at least people that are on unemployment insurance. So what are we looking at? From my understanding, and I could be wrong, this is my understanding of it. If you filed taxes in 2018 or 2019, and individually you made $75,000 or less, or if you were married filing jointly, $150,000 and less, you will get between a $1,200 to $2,400 check, one-time payment. If you're unemployed on unemployment insurance, instead of getting the average, I think there was an article that said the average nationwide for that is roughly around $300 to $400 a week. You'll get $900 to $1,000 a week because on top of the state benefit of unemployment insurance, you're also going to get a federally added one of up to $600 a week for up to 4 months. So I suppose that's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, I don't know how are they going to tax that. I don't know what they're going to do about that next year. Taxes, by the way, delayed at least for 3 months until June, I believe, June or July. So everything's kind of at a standstill right now, and I know people are already getting antsy, hoping it's going to be over tomorrow or a week from now. But I really don't think it's going to be over in a day or a week. I mean, even the most optimistic of scenarios, I think we're looking at another 2 to 3 months of this. So did you prepare? Did you take the time as this was building up to get prepared, to put a little money away to cover your bills, to get a little bit of food in a pantry so you don't have to risk going to the supermarket and getting coofed on? Did you get some home protection in case raiders come to take your SpaghettiOs? Did you get enough over-the-counter medicine? Did you make sure your prescriptions were filled? Did you visit the dentist before they all shut down? Did you do all the important things that you needed to do to prepare for this that might go on for 2 to 3 months optimistically? And the more pessimistic, scenario would be 12 to 18 months. My God, could you imagine this sporadically happening repeatedly all over the United States, all over the world for 12 to 18 months? I mean, I don't think anybody's prepared for something like that. How the hell are we going to get by if this is a thing that continues on until September or October of 2021? And we're going to have to hope that hydrochlorine or chloroquine or remdesivir or the Japanese jack-off drug fapinosavir or whatever, however you pronounce it, that one of those is a magic bullet and really helps with recovery. But then you're still left with the questions of reinfection, nerve damage, all sorts of crazy things. And it still goes on. So like I said, month 3, here we go. From January to February was the buildup. From February to March was the warning. And now from March to April is a reality. So what happens when we get into April and we move on into May? Is there going to be despair and catastrophe? Are we going to watch the markets collapse? The head of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, had said that they believe this is a global recession. And their most optimistic proposal is it will be a recession for at least a year. At least a year until the spring of 2021. And that's if the virus is contained. So they're already just saying it's straight out a global recession. So what happens? The markets continually fall apart because nobody can go to work. Everybody's sick. Everybody's unemployed. Well, what happens to the basic necessities of life? How do you pay your bills? What do you do about rent or a mortgage payment? How do you buy your food or your medicine? Are your kids going to go to school? How is that going to be handled? I mean, even if you retain your job and you can support your family, now your kid's at home every day, all day. You got to worry about that dumb little fucker breaking the stay-at-home order and going outside to lick a toilet seat. Do you remember those coronavirus parties that were popular for about a day? We saw a bunch of teenagers and college-age students going out and being like, fuck it, spring break, man, I'm going to get so drunk. And now they're all puking up blood and shit. I've seen like 3 or 4 articles talking about people posting this shit on Instagram and other social media accounts saying that they weren't scared of shit and they were licking toilet seats. They're going to Corona parties, and now they're koofing themselves silly and regretting that fucking decision. So how do you deal with your kids? What do you do with them? I mean, all our institutions, all our public gatherings, the things that we do on a daily basis, they're group activities. Oh, the logistics of this shit is a nightmare. I'm glad I don't work in government. I'm glad I'm not on some pandemic team or some legislative body in this country or any country. Because trying to work out the nightmare scenario of this shit, even short term, seems like it would be well below the pay that you'd be getting to do it. I mean, what are the numbers we're looking at right now? If I were to go to BNO, and I know they're again, it varies from place to place, but if I were to go to BNO, what are we looking at right now? Okay. Can I bring this up? Let me see if I can show this on screen for everybody without this crashing the stream. Let me try here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Here are the numbers from BNO. I think that should be, yeah, that's good enough in focus. Yep, okay. So updated throughout the day. We're nearly at 600,000 cases, really just 17 and change off from hitting 600,000 infections. The death toll, 27,000 people. 437,000 unresolved, 133,000 resolved. You can look at those numbers. Look at that. The United States, nearly 20,000 new cases today, nearly 400 deaths. Italy, as well, has surpassed China with 5,900 infections and 919 deaths. I believe that's a high score for them. One thing I've noticed about China, very interesting with the Chinese numbers, they post piddling numbers, ridiculously small bullshit numbers. But I've noticed almost every day for the last week or two consistently that when the Chinese post numbers, it's a 10% death rate. So 55 cases, 5 deaths. I believe yesterday it was 80 cases and 8 deaths. The day before that, 100 cases and 10 deaths. And then another 50 cases and 5 deaths. Weird how that new rate's 10% rather than 4%. Spain starting to blow up with 7,900 cases. Germany, you might be looking at their death count wondering what's going on there. Well, I've heard numerous stories as to why Germany's calculations on their death rate is different from everybody else's. I don't know what the truth is. Some have said that they don't count any secondary conditions contributing to death as being contributors, but the primary cause. So if you had a heart condition and then you had a heart attack, they count it as a heart attack rather than COVID-related, even if you test positive. Is that true? I don't know. I really don't, because I'm not really paying attention to Germany when it compares to all the other countries of interesting shit going on. France is starting to pick up. Do you remember back in mid-February when their, was it Macron, had said they're not going to shut the border? Do you remember how we all laughed about that on this stream? When he said that even though Italy was experiencing an explosion of cases, they weren't going to shut the border. And now look at France. I believe at the time France had like 30 cases, and they weren't going to shut that fucking border, and now they're at 32,000. Maybe you should have closed the fucking border. Maybe all of the nations that had said something similar should have, because Italy infected about 17 countries. Iran in the Middle East infected, I believe it was 14 or 13. I mean, both of these two nations have really spread the gift around the Middle East and Europe quite well. The United Kingdom, knocking it out of the ballpark there. Nearly 3,000 new cases, 180 deaths. You've got good old Boris getting infected. Prince Charles getting infected. Lots of high-ups getting infected. Well, don't feel like you're alone in that. I'm fairly certain the United States, we've been dealing with something similar. We have 4 representatives that are infected, with others that are self-isolating. In fact, Rand Paul is one of the people that tested positive. South Korea slowly creeping up, even with their great testing methodology and case tracking. In fact, I believe that Singapore as well is starting to show an upswing. Let's go through. The Swedes have so far held it off. Israel's starting to get some cases going there a little bit. I don't know if this means they've had no new infections today or if they haven't reported their numbers today. Israel, Sweden, and Brazil, I don't know. Everybody reports at a different time, so it's hard to keep track. Japan, I don't know what's going on with Japan. I think they just want the Olympics. I don't trust their numbers, I'll be honest with you. I think BNO could probably remove Diamond Princess. Nobody at this point really cares, but here's Singapore, 683 cases. One other interesting tidbit about all these countries that are infected, if you go through here, is that only a few now are stuck at number 1. For a long time, a lot of these countries, the ones especially more recently infected, just had 1 case. And now it's just these 4. Papua New Guinea, St. Vincent, Libya, and Timor-Leste. That's it. They all just had 1. That was it. But now everybody's starting to get a case here and a case there, and it slowly builds on itself, and you start noticing it going up and up and up. And we've seen the build-up that happens with all these countries, with the exception, save 1 or 2, of a South Korea or a Singapore, or I guess a Japan, if you want to go with what their numbers they're proposing are. But everybody else, though, starting to get into that area, starting to get into that number zone, where things get really shitty for you, where things get really bad for you. So we'll see how it goes. All these goddamn countries reporting new infections, new deaths, just growing day after day. I mean, how do you reopen travel? How do you do it? Regionally? I mean, can you even trust regional that it's going to be safe? Can you say, well, we've waited for Asia now for 5 months. Let's open it back up. Or Europe, we've waited 4 months. Let's open it back up. I mean, we're looking at potentially international, at least commercial traffic, being just stop dead for maybe half a year. I don't know. When do you reopen it? Or what about, internally within the United States? Are you going to let people take a plane flight from New York to Florida? What about a car trip? We've already seen a couple of governors say we're not letting people from New York come in, and if they come in, they're getting quarantined. I believe that was Texas, Florida, and one other. Not 100% sure. Again, I'll have a more concrete stream for you on Sunday. A lot of people wanted me to stream, so I figured, fuck it, I'll do it for a little bit. Touch base with everybody. Prove to you that I haven't died yet from the Kufr curse. But if this reinfection shit is true, if this reoccurrence thing is true, if we just keep getting reinfected or reinfecting others, I'm going to stop calling it the Wu flu and start calling it the forever flu, because the thing never goes away. And you're going to have to hope and wait for that vaccine to show up to have some kind of an impact, and just stopping it and mitigating it and making it end. This little airborne AIDS epidemic that seemingly has caught the world with its pants down. So I'm going to guess that we'll easily, again, I'll throw a number out there, easily, at least worldwide, be at 1 million cases, probably by, I don't know, the end of the first week of April. By the end of April, maybe 2 million cases. I think it really depends on how much it keeps spreading in Europe and what the hell happens in the United States. What kind of a direction do we have going forward when dealing with this? And how well does that little combination of antibiotics and the malaria medicine actually work? I know people cite a French study saying it showed great results. That had no control group. I know another study by the Jewish guy in the Hasidic community, 350 patients. Well, there was a Chinese study said it didn't work, and people when they were criticizing that said you really need a sample size of somewhere around 740 to 750 to make sure. So it's like none of the studies really are giving you anything concrete, just some good anecdotal information that maybe it has an effect. But we heard the same thing with Kaletra. Oh, the AIDS medicine works. Just take the AIDS medicine until they did a proper study and showed no, it really doesn't. Same with the interferon, same with the steroids, same with the whole slew of medicines that people were getting, with maybe the exception of remdesivir, which was given in very limited quantities. 500 doses to China, one case in Washington, and a few others in Europe. So I don't know what we're hoping for. I don't know what we're waiting for. But to unfuck ourselves from this situation that we're currently in right now is going to take a good amount of time. Even with the best of news, it's going to take a few months to unfuck ourselves. And then people have to pick up the pieces. Do we get our jobs back? Do the companies reopen? What the fuck do we do with that? Is the stock market going to ever recover to where it was before this started? Are we going to see December numbers again or not? Who knows? So sorry for the doom speaking, the black pill, the pessimism. But I call it like I see it, and I don't really see anything that's giving me high hopes that this is going to be dealt with in a quick and efficient manner. I see kind of a bumbling response from almost everybody. Again, save one or two countries that were really on the ball. And even then, the mitigation has only really slowed it down. It hasn't stopped it. So will we see a second wave in China? I don't know. Will the great new medication come out that deals with this? I don't know. What I do know is, for 3 months this thing has been butt-fucking the world. And that's got to put her above a position like Ebola or SARS or MERS. Or even other diseases out there. I love watching and reading the fucking Twitter feed of people like Bill Buy the Dip Mitchell, who really only seems to give two shits about the stock market and doesn't give a fuck about if your grandmother or father or mother die. He really doesn't care about that. He wants those numbers. He wants big green line go up. That's what Bill Mitchell wants. But I watched him talk about Italy and the death rate. And I kid you not, this guy basically said the Italians are dying because they're pussies. Well, let's see if he has that same, that same bravado, that same gusto when we start seeing a percent increase in the death rate in Americans. Once you get past that capacity, once you surge past it, and there just aren't enough healthy doctors, and there just isn't enough beds, and there aren't enough machines, and there's not enough protective gear, you're going to see an increase. I mean, we're sending fucking hospital ships to California and to New York. We're building hospitals just like the Chinese did. We're watching the same thing play out, but we're watching it play out in a more open environment. I think that brings me back around again to the Chinese numbers. I'm just going to say it outright. I really don't think it's anything, extremist to say, but I don't believe their numbers at all. I think their infection rate is way higher, and I think their death rate is way higher than what they're saying. I mean, you can look at all sorts of anecdotal reasons for why that is. Now, will the truth ever come out? I couldn't tell you. Well, what I have seen recently are the little riots that are going on from province to province. People in Hubei, which is where Wuhan is, trying to travel around the country are being boxed in by other provinces that don't want them because they believe they're still infected and dangerous. So you're seeing people from Hubei basically fighting people on bridges, beating each other with fucking police shields. I'll have video footage of that on Sunday when I stream. You can take a look at that. It's pretty remarkable watching Chinese society start to crumble a little bit. But, on the subject of things that really make you think, we're starting to see riot videos come out of China. All Chinese theaters closed down, and we're hearing reports of reinfection rates back in Wuhan and Hubei. And all three of these things are coming out at roughly the same time. So what that tells me is probably not good news from China, and we're probably going to get more bad news coming from China. And I think whatever that bad news might end up being is what's going to really either give us hope, as in we can stop that from happening here, or scare us shitless when we find out it's really bad. So I guess it's going to be a wait and see strategy. I mean, it's really the battle between the nothing burgers and the give it 2 weeks people. Which way is it going to go? Well, it's been 3 months, and it seems to be hanging on pretty strong. So I guess we'll see where it goes. Now, I know I haven't streamed a lot recently. Had a little bit of a run-in with, getting demonetized for a day there. Turned out YouTube had made a mistake and they remedied it. So that was easily fixed with a peace offering of Franzia. Fixed that pretty quickly. But just even outside of that, I'm not the sort of person that really streams daily. I don't mind doing it weekly, but not daily. If you're looking for daily coverage of this, you're going to have to look for somebody like I guess like a Lookner. I think he does streams on this almost every day, really going over sources and numbers. I'm more just like you. I'm watching this shit unfold, and occasionally I'll do a stream talking about it. But it has been one hell of a fucking show to watch. And it's far from a nothing burger. It most definitely is a happening. This amount of reaction, whether it's overplayed fear porn, like the Bill Mitchells would say, or appropriate response, it doesn't matter if it's either or. It's a happening. The world has lost its mind. We're seeing crazy shit take place right now that I don't think anybody thought was going to be. I don't think anybody thought, yeah, that's what 2020 is going to be like. That's what we're moving into. I think most people were thinking the elections in the United States were going to be the big shit show to watch. And I mean, they still will be with Joe Biden walking into walls. I don't know what the deal is with that, but Democratic Party might want to pick somebody else. I feel bad for Joe Biden. I saw a clip that had like all of his gaffes and all of his meanderings and wanderings, just talking about crazy shit and mixing up words. But there's one where he's standing at the podium, and his wife, I think it was his wife, had to come get him. She just whispers, Joe, and like hugs him, and he looks all kind of scatterbrained. And then she kind of leads him off stage, and it was the most depressing thing to watch. Like, I feel like he's just lost it mentally. I know that was like a meme beginning, but I really do think he is mentally not there. Whether that's Alzheimer's or something else, I don't know. But I think it's almost cruel of the Democrats to put him forward at this point. I don't know who your alternative is. I don't know who else you're going to pick. But I really thought the elections, I thought that was going to be the main story of 2020. You know, the build-up, the debates, all of that. And that has been vastly overshadowed by what we've been dealing with for the last 3 months. Since the start of this year. Can you believe it? We're almost into fucking April and it's still going. If anything, it's building up steam. It's absolutely surreal to watch this take place. And I think, regardless of the political divides that exist in the U.S. or around the world, I think we should all be able to say in a single, solitary, united voice, this is totally China's fault. You hear that, see? If you just told the truth, Winnie, this wouldn't have happened. You had to save face. You had to fuck us all over and look good. Now we're all paying the price for it, and it's your fault. And you are going to pay what you fucking owe. I'm talking reparations, motherfucker. I don't know how that's going to come, but it's coming. So don't get too comfortable sitting where you are right now. Because you owe us all quite a bit for fucking up our daily lives for 4 months now. Because you couldn't tell the fucking truth. Now, I will stream properly on Sunday. We'll have video clips of the riots in China, videos from hospitals in Italy and the United States to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like on the ground, as well as going over some more unique stories related to the virus that aren't really mainstream, but are out there and, bizarre enough that I think probably should be talked about, because if anything about this, if there's any pattern I've noticed in this, it's the weird shit most people find early on that pans out later. Do you remember at the beginning of this when the World Health Organization told everybody that China had assured them that COVID-19 could not spread person to person? There was no human transmission. Do you remember that? Because they were lying, and it totally did. Do you remember when people assured us that it only lived on surfaces for hours to a day at most, and now they're saying 17 days? You remember when they said there's no way it could stay in the air, that it was aerosolized and would fall to the ground within minutes? And yet now we're told it's up to 3, maybe 4 hours just hanging out in the air. They told us it couldn't infect pets, but it does. They told us there was no neurological component to it, but there appears to be, in asymptomatic carriers and in those that are dealing with a severe disease. So, I mean, shit. I don't know where it's going to go, but there's some stories related to that are weird, like the stuff we heard kind of early on were weird. Oh, also update for all the dudes listening, because this disease apparently likes to target men more than women with its severity. Apparently, it does cause damage to your balls based on more studies. They're noticing a drop in your T levels. Some hormonal damage is being done to your boys. Now, I don't know if that happens to asymptomatic people too, but just a heads up: if you get the koofs, you're gonna have trouble with the cumin. First come the koofs, then there's no cumin. So I don't know. That's not looking good. Your boys, your baby factory's getting fucked up by a girl here. Just a little bit of heads up. Oh, thank God for the Who. Yeah, thank God for Teddy and his amazing truth telling. Yes, Chet, that's right. Not a bioweapon. You can totally trust China. Yes, your balls, Chat. Your balls are totally going to get fucked. I have the study. I'll read it on stream on Sunday. Yes, it comes after your testicles. Yes, it fucks with your testosterone. I don't know if it's permanent or not, but it is something that's been observed not just in China now, but elsewhere. Oh, what a great little disease Corona Chan is. Just every day it's a new surprise. Every day you think you got it under control, and all of a sudden your balls don't work. What next? Is your head going to explode? Maybe exploding, like your limb's going to fall off? Like what's the next fucking iteration of this? What other things does it have prepared for us? Our poor cats and dogs getting this fucking thing? They're going to give it back to us? Is it going to mutate in them and come back to us and make us grow tails and shit? I don't know. So, yeah. So we'll have a series stream on Sunday of all the video clips and studies and all that shit. We'll do that. But people were asking on social media. They wanted an update stream. I guess proof of life. I am alive. Here's your update stream. There you go. We talked for a little while. We talked for an hour. Killed an hour. It's weird. I usually stream on the weekends because most people are working during the work week. But I guess right now that's not the case. It's not just America. It's Europe and other places that have quite a bit of unemployment due to lockdown. So people are kind of just chilling at home. So I'll try to put on a nice fun stream on Sundays. We talk about how your balls are going to explode and people beating each other in China. Going over the family friendly things that everybody can sit down and watch with their kids as we talk about COVID and all the wonderful things that it does. But never forget, chat, China lied. People died. All right, this is Winnie the Pooh's fault. Don't let him squirm his way out of it. Don't let him be snaky about that. And also always remember, whatever who tells you, it's almost always the opposite. So that's what makes me nervous when I hear Teddy from Who telling people that Trump is doing a great job, because Teddy is the same person that said China had it under control and that this wasn't a pandemic. In fact, almost every thing that Teddy has said is wrong. So when he starts praising how America's responding to it, I suddenly get really fucking nervous. That might be a good bellwether to see how fucked we are. Just listen to what the World Health Organization has to say. And if they say things look good, dig your fucking bunker a foot deeper, I guess is my suggestion to you on how to handle the whole COVID situation.